She wasn't better than you. She was just different. And that difference had nothing to do with your worth. Let that sink in. You gave him your time, your attention, maybe even your love. And in the end, he chose someone else. That decision stings in a way that words can barely describe. It's more than just a breakup. It feels like rejection on a soul level, like being told you weren't enough. But here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud. Being replaced doesn't mean you were lacking. It means he made a choice based on his needs, his confusion, or his ego, not your value. And what hurts most isn't always losing him. It's losing the fantasy of what you thought the relationship was going to be. Maybe you're overthinking every conversation, replaying what you said, wondering what she has that you don't. That cycle, it's emotional self-destruction masked as closure. And I know you want closure. You want answers. But I'm here to tell you something stronger than closure. Clarity. Clarity that his choice doesn't define you. Clarity that love isn't proven by who stays. It's proven by who values you in your entirety. So if you're sitting in the pain of being replaced, I want you to hold on to this. You were never meant to compete for a place in someone's heart. When it's real, you won't have to earn love. It will stand beside you, not make you chase it. This video is going to walk you through every step of letting go, rebuilding, and rising stronger than ever. Let's start. Sometimes the most painful part of being left for another woman is the feeling that you're not enough. That somehow in the invisible checklist in his mind, you came in second place. And let's be honest, it feels personal. When a man moves on so easily or seems happier with someone else, your brain starts running wild with comparisons. Was she prettier, funnier, more supportive, more mysterious? That spiral is what keeps you stuck. And it's time to break out of it. Here's a hard truth many people don't want to hear. Men don't always choose what's better. They often choose what's easier, what's newer, or what feeds their ego in the moment. Sometimes they choose someone who doesn't challenge them. Someone who hasn't seen their flaws yet. Someone who gives them a temporary high instead of long-term depth. That's not love. That's escapism. And when you realize that, you stop asking, what did she have that I didn't? And start asking, why was he even an option? He might have chosen her because she didn't demand growth the way you did. She tolerated behavior you were starting to question because you were evolving, setting standards, and he wasn't ready to meet them. And the truth is, some men don't want to be called higher. They want to stay comfortable. So they seek someone who lets them stay small. That doesn't make her the winner and you the loser. That makes him someone who chose the path of least resistance. This is the part that hurts but frees you. He saw who you were becoming, and he chose to walk away. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were becoming too much for the version of him that refused to grow. That is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his fear. Another truth, sometimes men choose chaos because peace scares them. When you're secure, consistent, and self-aware, it can feel unfamiliar, even threatening to someone who's used to dysfunction. So they chase drama that mirrors their past rather than stability that challenges their future. You were peace, and he wasn't ready. And if he did leave because of superficial reasons, look, status, or excitement, then he chose a temporary thrill over lasting connection. Let that choice speak volumes, because real love isn't about constant excitement. It's about trust, growth, and depth. If he couldn't recognize that, he was never your forever. You're not here to audition for love. You're not here to shrink yourself to be chosen. You're here to be aligned with someone who sees your depth and says, I choose her every day, even when it's hard. So no, you didn't lose. He lost someone who was willing to grow with him, love him deeply, and see him clearly. He'll realize it maybe not today, maybe not even soon, but one day he'll look back and understand the difference between what was easy and what was extraordinary. And by then you'll be long gone, whole healed, and far out of reach. Let's keep going. To truly move forward, you need to stop romanticizing his decision and start understanding his mindset. Not to excuse him, but to release yourself from the confusion. Because a lot of times the pain isn't just that he chose someone else. It's not knowing why. So let's go there. Men aren't always as complicated as we make them out to be. Many times they operate from ego, not emotion, from impulse, not intention. When he chose another woman, it probably wasn't some deep, well thought out decision. it was likely driven by one or more of the following: convenience, validation, timing, or a desire to escape emotional responsibility. A man will often choose what reflects how he feels about himself, not how he feels about you. That means if he's insecure, emotionally unavailable, or afraid of vulnerability, he's likely going to seek someone who doesn't require emotional depth, someone he can impress without exposing his flaws, someone who accepts the version of him that he feels comfortable being, not necessarily the one who pushes him to grow. You may have offered real connection, but real connection demands honesty, growth, and accountability. If he wasn't ready to face those things, your presence would feel too intense, not because you were wrong, but because he wasn't ready for right. Sometimes men chase admiration over authenticity. And if you started to see through his patterns, if you stopped putting him on a pedestal, if you held him to higher standards, that probably triggered something in him. Instead of rising to meet you there, he ran to someone who still sees the version of him that feels easier to maintain. Another layer to this: men often fear what they can't control. If you have a strong mind, if you know who you are, if you don't need him to validate your worth, that can be deeply intimidating. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because he doesn't know how to lead or love a woman who isn't dependent on him. So he goes where he feels more powerful, where he can feel needed, even if it's not real connection. So understand this: his mindset wasn't about choosing someone better. It was about choosing what he could handle, what his self-awareness, maturity, and emotional intelligence allowed him to choose at the time. That's why closure doesn't come from his explanation. It comes from your clarity. It's also possible that he didn't know what he wanted. Some men enter relationships hoping you will give them clarity. They get involved, hoping the feelings will grow, hoping the timing will magically work, hoping you'll fix something broken inside of them. But when things get real and it doesn't instantly click or stay exciting, they start to pull away. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they never had a clear direction in the first place. Because when you realize he chose based on his capacity, not your worth, you stop blaming yourself. You stop chasing answers and you start healing for real. Let's keep going. It gets better from here. Let's stop sugarcoating and dig into the real reasons he chose another woman. Not the ones you tell yourself to feel better, and not the ones he told you to soften the blow. The real ones, the kind that sting a little, but also set you free. One of the most common reasons a man chooses someone else is emotional immaturity. He may have been attracted to you, enjoyed your company, maybe even loved you in his own way. But love without maturity is chaos. When a man hasn't done the inner work, love feels overwhelming. Responsibility feels like pressure. Intimacy feels like exposure. So what does he do? He runs towards something that feels easier, lighter, less demanding, someone who doesn't require depth, presence, or growth. Here's the hard part. He might have chosen her because he didn't want to rise to the level you required. You challenged him in ways he wasn't ready for, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That doesn't mean you were too much. It means he was unprepared. And instead of confronting that discomfort, he looked for comfort elsewhere. We often assume he left because we lacked something. The truth? You may have had too much of what he couldn't handle. Self-respect, boundaries, emotional depth, honesty, vision. Another reason, validation seeking. Some men chase the feeling of being wanted more than they chase real connection. He might have met her at a time when his ego was bruised. Maybe things weren't going smoothly with you. Maybe he felt you were pulling away, setting standards, making him uncomfortable. Then she showed up, new, fresh, curious, unaware of his flaws. He didn't choose love. He chose ego repair. He chose to feel like a man again, even if it meant abandoning something real. Then there's timing, but not in the way most people think. Wrong time is often a polite excuse. What it usually means is, I'm not willing to become who I need to be to meet you here. And sometimes a man will subconsciously sabotage the relationship just to avoid stepping into the discomfort of growth. He'll choose the path of least resistance and justify it by saying things like, it just wasn't working, or I didn't feel the spark anymore. But behind those words is a deeper truth. He wasn't ready for you. Let's also talk about control and power dynamics. When a man doesn't feel in control with you, When he senses that you're independent, emotionally stable, and capable without him, it can shake him. Some men crave the upper hand. If he felt like he couldn't lead you, influence you, or have emotional leverage, he may have sought out someone who gave him that illusion. Not because it's love, but because it feeds the part of him that's afraid of feeling powerless. There's also the uncomfortable truth that some men confuse chemistry with compatibility. He might have had intense passion with her, maybe even chaos that felt thrilling. And because he hasn't matured emotionally, he mistook that for love. He didn't choose stability, respect, or connection. He's adrenaline, lust, the high that always crashes. And lastly, maybe he didn't know what he wanted, but she did. She might have pursued him, flattered him, or made him feel chosen. In his confusion, he mistook that certainty as a sign. But here's what he'll eventually learn. Being chosen by someone doesn't mean you chose right. So what does all this mean for you? It means that his decision was never about your value. It was about his capacity, his clarity, and his character. You can't control who he picked, but you can control what you make it mean. You weren't replaced. You were redirected away from someone who didn't truly see you toward a version of yourself that no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. Keep watching. The glow up is just beginning. Looking back, it's easy to think his decision came out of nowhere. But if you're honest with yourself, really honest, there were signs, subtle at first, easy to brush off, often disguised as mood swings, bad days, or miscommunication. But they were there. You just didn't want to see them. You felt it in your gut when the energy started to shift, when his texts got shorter, slower, less thoughtful, when the phone calls that used to last hours turned into silent minutes or quick check-ins. You noticed the way his eyes stopped lighting up when he saw you, how he stopped asking about your day, or worse, stopped listening when you answered. There were moments when he made you feel like too much, too emotional, too demanding, too deep. You learned to shrink your feelings to keep the peace. You started filtering your truth, afraid that speaking up might push him away. What you didn't realize was that you were already losing him, not because you spoke too much, but because he was already halfway out the door. You excused his inconsistency. One day, he was warm, attentive, present. The next, distant, distracted, unavailable. You blamed it on stress, work, life. But love doesn't disappear like that. Real connection doesn't come with conditions or cold fronts. What you were seeing was emotional unavailability in real time. And you mistook it for a phase. Remember the way he dodged serious conversations? Every time you brought up the future, it became an argument or a vague, let's not rush things. He was keeping you close enough to benefit from your presence, but distant enough to avoid accountability. You mistook that in-between space as potential, when it was really emotional limbo. Then there were the microaggressions, the subtle jabs at your confidence, the comments that made you question your worth. Maybe he made you feel jealous on purpose. Maybe he mentioned other women just to get a reaction. Maybe he compared you not directly, but in ways that made you feel like you were always one step behind. Those weren't accidents. That was emotional manipulation, control, disguised as honesty. And if you're being real with yourself, you probably ignored the way he responded when you were vulnerable. Instead of holding space, he shut down. Instead of showing empathy, he rolled his eyes, changed the subject, or made it about him. You started to believe that maybe you were asking for too much when all you wanted was to be heard. You may have even felt the fear in his silence, that intuitive knowing that something wasn't right, that he was drifting, that his heart wasn't in it anymore. But you loved him so much. You chose denial. You convinced yourself that if you just tried harder, gave more, or held on tighter, you could fix it. That's not weakness, that's hope. But hope without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. And let's not forget the most painful sign of all. You were the only one trying. You were the emotional anchor, the communicator, the peacemaker. You carried the weight of the relationship while he coasted. That imbalance was not love. It was survival mode, dressed up as romance. The truth is, you saw these signs. You just didn't want them to mean what they actually meant. You loved him, and love can make even the most obvious red flags look like temporary setbacks. But now you see clearly. Now you get to honor the part of you that tried to make it work, but also the wiser part of you that's ready to stop settling for breadcrumbs and call out the patterns that led here. This isn't just about him. It's about you. Reclaiming the power that came from ignoring the signs and promising yourself you won't do it again. You're waking up. Keep going. When someone you love pulls away, every part of your heart screams to hold on, to fight for them, to prove you're worth staying for. The temptation to chase after them, to beg for answers, affection, or a second chance. It feels almost impossible to resist. But here's what you need to hear. Begging for love doesn't bring it back. It only brings you further away from yourself. When you beg for someone to choose you, you're not asking for love. You're asking for validation. And validation that has to be coaxed out of someone is never real. Love given under pressure, out of guilt or obligation, isn't love. It's pity. And the moment you shrink yourself, silence your pride, and beg someone to stay, you've already handed over the most valuable thing you own, your self-respect. You weren't made to chase what's meant to choose you. Real love flows toward you. It doesn't have to be hunted down. You won't need to constantly explain your worth or prove your value to someone who truly sees it. If someone can walk away, let them. Their absence creates space for your clarity. Because someone who leaves you is showing you they were never built to love you the way you deserve. Let's be clear, chasing someone after they've emotionally or physically left doesn't fix the relationship. It only delays the heartbreak. What you're doing is trying to convince them to come back to a version of you that you're not even proud of. A version that's desperate, anxious, unbalanced. That's not love. That's survival. When you chase someone, you make them the prize. You make their attention the finish line. You let them believe they are the one with all the power and that your happiness is in their hands. But you are not meant to be an option, a backup, or a convenience. You are not here to perform, impress, or persuade someone to want you. You see, when you stop chasing, you start healing. You start shifting from why did he leave me to why was I holding on to someone who didn't show up for me? That's when everything changes, because the real question isn't how do I get him back? The real question is why would I want someone back who was okay with hurting me? Begging also robs you of your dignity. It puts your emotional power into someone else's hands and teaches them that you're willing to sacrifice your boundaries just to be loved. But love isn't proven through sacrifice. It's proven through consistency, effort, and respect. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you reclaim your power. It tells the universe, I know what I bring to the table. I will not settle for a seat where I have to beg to be fed. That level of self-worth is magnetic. And the right person, they'll see it without needing to be convinced. Here's the truth. Someone who truly loves you won't put you in a position to beg. They won't pull away to see if you'll chase. They won't manipulate your emotions to feed their ego. They'll meet you in the middle. They'll show up with certainty, not confusion, with effort, not excuses. So if you find yourself tempted to chase, pause, breathe, remember who you are, the version of you that's loved properly. She doesn't need to plead. She doesn't chase. She receives. Let him go. Let the silence do what your words could, and trust that what's meant for you will never have to be begged for. Keep watching. Your glow up is already in motion. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't love him. It doesn't mean the memories weren't real or the moments didn't matter. It means you finally realized that holding on was hurting more than healing. And the moment you choose to release that grip, not in anger, not in desperation, but with grace, you take your power back. Letting go gracefully is one of the most powerful things a woman can do. Not because it's easy, but because it's rare. Most people hold on out of fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that they won't find something better. But grace says, even if this hurts, I trust myself enough to walk away with my head high and my heart open. You see, there's a difference between walking away in pain and walking away in power. When you let go with grace, you're not pretending it didn't hurt. You're just refusing to let the pain define you. You're choosing not to become bitter, not to act out of revenge, not to lose yourself trying to prove your worth to someone who already failed to see it. There's strength in silence. There's power in choosing peace over explanation. Sometimes the most impactful thing you can say is nothing at all. Not every goodbye needs to be loud. Not every heartbreak needs to be dramatized. When you walk away without needing closure, you create it for yourself. You say, I accept what is. I don't chase what's not mine. And that's the shift. When you realize that letting go doesn't mean losing. It means choosing you. Choosing your peace over his potential. Choosing healing over holding on. Choosing self-respect over recycled. The truth is, not everyone you love is meant to stay. Some people are lessons, not lifelines. They show up to teach you how much you've grown or how far you still need to go. And when their time in your life is done, clinging only creates more pain. Graceful letting go means you're wise enough to know the difference between fighting for love and fighting against yourself. You stop checking their socials. You stop rereading old messages. You stop fantasizing about what if and start focusing on what's next. Grace is the quiet decision to move forward, even while your heart still aches a little. It's waking up every day and choosing not to reach back. It's learning to smile again without faking it. It's forgiving them without needing an apology, and forgiving yourself for staying as long as you did. Letting go gracefully doesn't mean you won't cry. It means you'll cry with dignity. You'll feel the pain, but you won't let it turn you cold. You'll process the loss, but you won't let it convince you that love isn't worth having. Grace means keeping your heart open while protecting your peace. It's soft strength, quiet courage, and here's the beauty in all of it. When you let go with grace, you create space. Space for new energy, new love, new opportunities. The universe rewards women who release what no longer serves them. When you no longer chase, when you no longer beg, when you no longer fight to be seen, you become magnetic to the very love you used to beg for. So no, letting go doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally honored your worth enough to say this chapter is over and I'm brave enough to turn the page. You are not broken. You are becoming. Keep going. You're almost at the breakthrough. Rebuilding your self-worth after someone chooses someone else isn't about revenge, pretending you're fine, or jumping into something new to feel better. It's about meeting yourself again, fully, honestly, and without the lens of who you were trying to be for them. Because here's the truth. You were never unworthy. You were just giving your worth to someone who didn't know how to hold it. When someone leaves, it can feel like a reflection of your value. Like their rejection confirms your deepest insecurities. But what you need to understand is this. Someone's inability to love you properly is not a statement about your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. You don't need to become more to be loved. You need to remember who you were before you started believing you had to prove anything. Rebuilding starts in the small moments. It's in choosing not to internalize their absence as a failure. It's in the way you talk to yourself when no one's around. The way you stop questioning what was wrong with you and start asking what's right with me that I forgot. It's in giving yourself back the love, attention, and presence you used to pour into them. You start reclaiming your worth every time you set a boundary. Every time you say no to something that doesn't align with your peace. Every time you refuse to chase, explain, or overextend. Your value isn't tied to how much you can endure, sacrifice, or give to someone who doesn't give back. It's in how you show up for yourself when no one else does. Healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's quiet confidence. The kind where you walk into a room and don't need anyone to validate you because you've already done that work internally. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's knowing that you are enough, just as you are, even if someone else couldn't see it. Rebuilding your self-worth means forgiving yourself for forgetting it in the first place, for settling, for staying too long, for mistaking chemistry for compatibility. It's not about shame. It's about growth. You had to lose pieces of yourself to realize you were never supposed to give them away. And maybe that heartbreak was the wake-up call. Maybe it was the crack that let the light in. Because sometimes pain is the only thing loud enough to get your attention. But now that you're listening, you get to rise. You get to rebuild. And this time you're building on truth, not fear. You're not starting over from scratch. You're starting over from experience. Stronger, wiser, softer, but not weaker. More loving, but with better boundaries. This is your comeback and your worth. It never left. It's been waiting for you to return to it all along. Let them go. Reclaim yourself. You're the prize. You deserve more. Not just more from others, but more from yourself. More love, more respect, more peace, and more joy than you ever thought possible. The moment you realize this is the moment your whole world begins to shift. Too often, we settle for less because we don't believe we're worth the full measure of love and happiness. We lower our standards to keep someone who isn't fully there, hoping their half-hearted effort will someday become enough. But love isn't about waiting around for someone to finally see your worth. It's about recognizing it first in yourself. You deserve someone who chooses you every day, not someone who chooses someone else when things get hard. You deserve to be prioritized, to be celebrated, and to be cherished, not as an option, but as a priority. You deserve a partner who meets you where you are and is willing to grow alongside you, not run from what scares them. And most importantly, you deserve to be your own champion, to be the one who never doubts your value, no matter what someone else decides. Because at the end of the day, your worth is not up for negotiation. It's not something to be earned, begged for, or proven. It's simply who you are. This isn't just about finding the right person.